Our video today is presented by BetUS. All right, let's talk some recent updates. Richie, Florida State been really, really active in the portal.
Yep.
Not a surprise to anybody. Hey, a week ago, we were complaining that nothing had happened yet in the portal. And then like the next day they get a couple of commits, things start to take off. They start doing a lot more, which we said when we were on here, this is probably what's going to happen. We're going to whine and you know what, and complain about it. And then they'll go crazy in the portal, which I wouldn't say they've gone crazy, but they've certainly made some additions. James Williams, the defensive end that everybody wanted from Nebraska, follows his coach down here, and I assume will start at defensive end for Florida State this year. It'd be pretty surprising if he didn't for any reason. Gunnar Hansen, an offensive tackle from Vandy. I haven't seen Florida State announce that yet. I've heard some rumblings that that'll get announced early part of this week, so before Christmas, ideally. Doesn't sound like there's any concern there, but he committed to Florida State. All his stuff's still up on Instagram for all you sleuths that go and check and make sure these kids aren't backing off their commitments. McCray, the edge from Western Kentucky. Adrian Medley, the UCF offensive line man, interior guard, and then Randy Pittman, tight end from UCF. Richie, I don't know if you're noticing a trend there, but outside of Pittman, which I want to talk about Pittman specifically, all trench players. The thing that, I mean, you got your quarterback, and we've all got our thoughts on Castellanos, good, bad, the other. Castellanos, I actually was corrected on that on a recent video. Castellanos. So the major emphasis here, not that they won't take people at other positions, major emphasis on the offense and defensive lines. And I think Florida State's going to continue to push on those fronts.
Yeah, and I think I have a take here that might not be very popular, but I think it's an interesting trend when you look at the transfers that Florida State has got outside of like a Jermaine Williams. Getting guys from lower level schools like Nebraska, Vandy, Western Kentucky, UCF, etc. You want to have transfers that are upgrading themselves in terms of where they're playing. We've taken transfers in the last year from Alabama, LSU, and other places that just didn't work out. And if you're leaving a school like Alabama, right, why are you leaving that school? And I think I bought into the you know whatever it was, the Kool-Aid, and said, oh, we got all these guys from Bama, this is awesome. And why were they leaving Alabama? And then you look at the transfers that have really worked out for us. Jared Verse, you know, even like Jarian Jones from South Carolina, like these guys from these smaller schools that just wanted to step up and to try and elevate their profile. I think that's what a lot of these players are. And maybe this is just me trying to convince myself that these are all amazing takes. I really do like all the takes, to be honest. I think they are really good takes, but I think it's better when you get players from lower level schools who probably might have been, overlooked in the recruiting process originally, proven themselves, which all of these guys have from what I've looked into, and now want to get their exposure even more elevated at a place like Florida State. So I'm really happy with all of these, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, you can certainly get guys from bigger programs, like you think about a Jermaine Johnson, but for the most part, you do question, why did things not work out for you at Alabama? Like, and it could work, right? I do think we were probably, like, to give maybe some credit to the Alabama stuff, I think that Alabama had such a mass exodus after Saban left that you just kind of, like, in my mind, I was thinking I was willing to ignore the idea of them. I hate to call us a step down from Alabama, but like, let's call it what it is. Alabama's the best program in the last 10 years. And so even if you're thinking like they take a step down, or is it like their coach left, this, that, and the other, like that, you got the Hilson flip, which he obviously ended up signing with you, signed with Missouri, right? Like, all right, just taking the biggest bag, aren't we? But you're kind of thinking in your mind, like, okay, well, maybe they're not stepping down. They're leaving because their coach left. They're doing this, that, and the other, but obviously the takes didn't work. And I will say Florida State has not hit on every single one of their first targets in the portal this year. Like, I'm not trying to represent that. But I do think that there's been a better evaluation process. And you are bringing in guys who were very productive. You brought in an offensive lineman from Vandy who was very good for them this year. And I understand that Vandy is not necessarily oh man, the crown jewel. Like, I will get right back to chatting with Richie, but first, I want to give some love to our friends over at BetUS. Make sure that you're betting with BetUS using our code YouTube150. That gets you a 150% deposit bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your next two, all of that up to $2,000. If you're betting on the postseason, if you're betting on NFL, if you're betting on bowls, make sure that you're betting with BetUS using our code YouTube150. But you're not picking up an offensive tackle from Georgia. You're not picking up an offensive tackle from Michigan or Ohio State or Tennessee. Like, those guys aren't leaving very often out of the portal, right? And so, or leaving to go into the portal. And so, yeah, you do have to find what's available. It's a good mix of good evaluations and guys that you think you can coach up a little bit and what's there, what's available. And so I like a lot of the takes. The Medley the guard from UCF, graded out as one of their top 5 offensive linemen. He wasn't their best by any means. I'm not trying to sell you on the fact that he's going to come in here and just be amazing, but he had a really good year. One of his better games was against Florida. That's a tough place to play. That's their best opponent when you think about it from that perspective. I mean, I know they played Colorado and teams with more wins, but when you think about like Power 5 or Power 4 competition, you're picking up guys that are really, really productive and that you hope to get a lot out of. And I think there's a better expectation of kind of what you're looking for this year. Like, you brought in Marvin Jones Jr. last year, and everybody just thought like, oh, well, he was a 5-star, right? Like, that's going to be our guy. And we tried to caution people and say like, I think that's more of a depth piece. But people were just so excited about having the legacy, getting a guy from Georgia. Whereas you pick up the McCray kid this year, and I don't think anybody's expecting McCray from Western Kentucky to come in and, be the ACC's leader in sacks or anything crazy like that. I do think you brought in a kid that's going to set the edge and do really well and provide you more depth. And so your expectations of what you're getting are just a little bit different this year. And then obviously, the only one I didn't mention, and I want to get to the tight end here in a second, I do think James Williams can be really, really productive for you this year. Yeah. Knowing the system, having played under Knighton, I think that's also an advantage for Medley, having played under Hand. I think James Williams, though, is a big-time pickup, a very sought-after player. I expect him to be a big upgrade over what your defensive end play was this year. We've talked about this a million times, and I'll keep saying it until I'm blue in the face. We're not trying to overhype things after we really overhyped this roster and this team last year, but you can still be excited about picking up productive players that have shown an ability to be good at other places. Last year, you brought in a bunch of guys that didn't have a lot of production, right? Yeah. Malik Benson, not a ton of production. Roydell Williams, just a lot of them. Earl Little, like there was a ton. MJJ. And this year you are bringing in guys that have production. Now, does it translate? I don't know, man. We got to see what happens when October, November to get here. But I do think there's more excitement around this group and the way that the staff is attacking the portal.
Yeah, and I think that's key, right? We got really excited about, these guys. They were all high 4, high 5 stars, coming out of high school that went to big universities like Georgia, Alabama, LSU. And, we're like, oh, man, we're just reloading. This is going to be no problem. Yeah, 2-10 happened. That happened. And there's no denying that. There's no spinning that. And you nor I are trying to spin 2-10. But at the same time, yeah, I think going out and getting guys that have proven production, right? That is key. Jared Verse was a proven commodity at Albany. Yeah, it was Albany, but everybody wanted him. Braden Fisk at Western Michigan was a proven commodity, and Florida State brought him in. Keon Coleman, that was kind of an easier one at Michigan State. Everyone knew he was going to be great, and certainly he was. And if he was healthy the entire season last year or 2 years ago at this point, I think he would have been a true contender to win the Blitnikoff. There's just so much when you go Florida State, when you look at what we've done in the portal in Mike's time, the most success he's had isn't players from big schools, Jermaine Johnson, that being the one exception. It's players that have proven themselves elsewhere, and then they've come here and they have meshed with the team perfectly and also produced at Florida State. And I think that's hopefully what we're getting here. Again, to TJ's point, we're not going to tell you all these guys are hits. We're going to the playoff next year. None of that. I don't think either of us believe that. But at the same time, you're getting players that have proven themselves at the college level. And I think that's a big deal.
Randy Pittman is the tight end from UCF that you have brought in, and I want to read this about him specifically from somebody that's pretty well connected with UCF, will remain nameless, but somebody that I am pretty close with over at UCF, and they said this, and I'll read it, you know, out of a message that I got. Good player with a ton of upside that can be used in a lot of ways. He's an excellent pass catcher. He's a really strong blocker as well, and just brings another element to your offense. He said it's a big deal for UCF to lose him. He followed up. I asked him a couple of questions, but then he followed up later and said, when UCF brought in Kylan Fox, who was committed to Florida State at one time, this past class, they were pitching all of these two tight end sets and fun ways to pair him with Pittman, who obviously is now at Florida State, and Florida State's announced that, so pretty solidified, pretty locked in. And it just makes me think, like with Landon Thomas there, obviously the smoke is that Amari Williams is going to head to defensive end or get some looks there. We'll see what ends up happening with that. We'll see kind of where he is with the knee injury that he had in that Florida game as well. But if you're still wanting to kind of pair those tight ends and have two tight ends playing at once, Pittman, an excellent addition to that room. And again, you're thinking, oh, well, it's just UCF, or you think of them in a lower, and I get that's very fair. Like that's not, you don't have to try and sell me on like, oh, but just the fact that UCF fans are not even fans, like kind of UCF people that are close to that program are pretty honest in saying like, yeah, that's a pretty big loss. Like we are not excited about losing him. Really, really good on both things, right? Blocking and catching the ball. I think that's a big deal. And somebody that I'm really excited about him, and it probably does open it up for Amari to go back to defensive end, which needs to be a focus. Like I like the James Williams pickup. But you lost a lot there too. You need to kind of restock that position because you haven't recruited it especially well. Got a couple of freshmen this year, but I'm excited about Pittman a ton. James Williams, a lot of people's favorite pick, and I know that tight end is not the sexiest position. I'm really excited for Randy Pittman. I'm not going to say he's my favorite commit or anything like that so far, but he is one that I have a lot of hope for, especially with his upside.
Yeah, and I think to your point, he's not just a receiving tight end. He's a good blocker as well. Like he can help out. And Gus Malzahn wants to run the ball, and so does Mike Norvell. They want to be a run first offense and use that to open up the receiving game. And if he can help establish a run game and then also be a threat in the receiving game, that's a huge bonus for you. Like that's exactly what you want and need in this offense that you're going to try to put into place. And I think it's a big deal. By no means is he going to, be in New York City next year or anything like that. But it's a huge benefit to the offense that you have someone now where you can change the number game when it comes to blockers versus defenders when you know you're going to run the ball, but at the same time have someone who is a threat to go out and catch a ball on 3rd and 7. I think it's a great pickup.
So one other note that we'll talk about, and then we'll kind of move on from this, but Florida State also got a commitment from 2026 offensive tackle Xavier Payne. He was Herb Hand's first offer since taking over the job at the high school ranks, the prep ranks, and becomes his first commit as well, and actually has a tackle frame. We've not done a great job of recruiting tackles here. We've recruited a lot of guard type positions and moved him over to tackle. 6'7", 290. He's not rated at all. We'll see how good the evaluations were there, if he ends up picking up some stars or where he ends up finishing. I don't want to say I don't care about the stars, but at this point, this early, a lot of the 26 guys aren't rated properly, and we'll kind of see how they progress through their senior year. Offensive line, certainly a crapshoot that you need to throw a ton of bodies at, and you need to continue to raise the floor. But I am excited about his frame and his size. He certainly can put on some weight where he is right now and be, I talked with Clay Fink about this at Noles 24/7. Herb Hand likes big offensive linemen. I think we're getting away from just the super athletic, quick guys on the offensive line and really kind of building a bigger offensive line there. So I know this mostly was portal, but a recruiting commit as well. I don't know if you have any thoughts there quickly on him, but wanted to mention him as well.
Yeah, nothing major. I think Herb Hand, his resume speaks for itself. I think he's a phenomenal line coach. I think he's a technician, which we talked about last week, and he knows what he's looking for. So, it's hard to say early on when he hasn't even coached the spring practice here. But I'll trust him for now because I don't think Gus Malzahn would take him if he thought he was not that guy. And Gus Malzahn, his resume clearly speaks for itself as well.
Yeah, no. So we'll see. Yeah, I'm not telling you that this kid is going to be amazing or terrible or anything in between. But I do. We'll kind of see how
Yeah.
that kind of moves along.